What's going on, guys? It is the Derf, and today I have got an excellent build for you guys, pairing the Barrow-Dyad with our favorite stronghold Arc Titan. This build is incredibly powerful. It's going to give you insane ability regen, generate tons of orbs of power. It's going to make you virtually unkillable and a menace to all enemies of the Traveler that you can find anywhere in the system. This Stronghold Titan typically plays a little bit slower with most builds, but with this Arc build and Barrow-Dyad and with Act 3 artifact release, it's going to be a monster build for you guys. So if you guys do find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing or sharing with a guardian in need. I'll have a dim link in the description as well as my Discord. All right, guys, let's get on into this.
Yeah, boy!
So for our Titan build here, Striker Titan subclass or super of choice, it's going to be Thunder Crash. Now, if you have trouble handling Thunder Crash's accuracy, you can absolutely switch to Self or Fists of Havoc. The only downside to that, of course, is if you are dealing with an aerial boss, so just be aware of that. For abilities, we're going to go with the Rally Barricade, 38-second base cooldown, obviously going to be much quicker than that with Orb Pickup. Strafe Lift, Thunderclap. I prefer Thunderclap simply because it's got a better range to it, and if you are firing this from behind your barricade, it doesn't matter how close you are, you can hit from, halfway across the map. Flashbang Grenade is our grenade of choice. We want to be able to stun unstoppable champions at literally any time that we choose. We are going to be relying on our abilities to stun unstoppable champions if and when we see them, more so than our weapons. For aspects, we're going to go with Touch of Thunder. We're going to scroll all the way down to the Flashbang Grenade. Flashbang Grenade emits an additional blinding flash on bounce. So it's just another way to get a little extra tick damage on general enemies. And with the champions, if they don't get hit or stunned immediately with the Flashbang Grenade right away, say if you're in a GM or whatever, the second blast will complete the stunning mechanism. Storm's Keep is our next aspect. Cast your class ability to grant a moderate amount of bolt charge. Stacks to you and your nearby allies. When behind your barricade, you and your allies gain stacks of bolt charge over time, and your weapons can discharge max stacks of bolt charge. So this is going to be pretty key with how we are doing this. When you're rolling with the combination of Barrow-Dyad and the Stronghold and a sword, as well as Stormkeep and the barricade aspect, you're going to have at least two different ways to discharge your bolt charge, as well as doing insane amounts of damage. Now, if you're up close in front of a boss or a major, or if you're solo and all the enemies are coming at you and you're crouched behind your barricade and you have your guard up with your sword, that's going to proc bolt charge, not to mention all of the fun new strand perks that we're going to be going through here on the artifact. But if you're firing from far away and you're crouched behind your barricade, you can use your Barrow-Dyad to deal ridiculous amounts of damage. Oh, and still call down those lightning strikes. So kind of, I guess we'll call it a threefer, because there's three different ways, I guess, theoretically you can use it. Near and or far away from enemies. And then, of course, you vary it up with your weapon of choice. For fragments, those fans out there of my last Arc Stronghold Titan build, it's going to be a little bit different, not much different though. We're going to go with Spark of Frequency to get it going. Melee hits increase your equipped weapons reload speed and stability for a short duration. This is another reason why we want the Thunderclap paired with our Barrow-Dyad, because typically speaking, we are going to be firing from a distance anyways, so having the weapon plus this is going to make a lot of sense. While amplified, the effects are increased and you gain additional or increased stacks of bolt charge from all sources. That is the key, from all sources. Next up, we're going to have Spark of Resistance. We did not have this on our previous Stronghold Titan for Arc, but we're putting it on for this, and here's why. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage, plus 10 to strength. Because we're going to be going back and forth between using our Barrow-Dyad and raising our sword for guard, it's imperative that we have the ability to resist damage, arguably even more so than before, because we will be exposing ourselves when we don't have our guard up and we are relying on our Barrow-Dyad to do, to rotate through DPS sessions and or to clear out a mess of enemies in front of us where we don't want to use our sword ammo. Next up, we've got Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target or defeating a target with bolt charge creates an ionic trace. Of course, you can discharge your bolt charge with literally any weapon and or abilities. So whether that's your Thunderclap, your Barrow-Dyad, using your sword, or reflecting damage with your sword, or if you use your energy weapon. Either way, all of it is good times for you when you're trying to help out your teammates. Last but not least, we're going to go with Spark of Amplitude. Rapidly defeating targets while you are amplified creates an orb of power. I guess you can say you probably don't need this one. It's a nice quality of life add-on where you get an extra orb of power for all of your hard work being the center of attention and taking the heat off of your allies. But being amplified is not going to be hard to accomplish with this build. You're going to be amplified constantly, which is going to make you even more potent just in it of itself. For abilities, I know it's a little bit hard to see on the screen, so I'll read it out real quick. You want Resilience Focus at a 10. Try to get that as high as possible. Next up, I recommend either Discipline or your Melee at least a T8. Discipline is probably more important now because you want the Flashbang Grenade to be able to stun unstoppable champions. Also, it is the quickest recovering ability between all of the different grenade options. So it just makes sense to have this as high as possible so that you can have your grenade at literally any given time. But if you prefer your Melee, you put your Melee up there at 8 and just make sure you're picking up your Orbs of Power and make sure you're saving your grenade. If you know you're going to be seeing an unstoppable champion at any point during whatever activity you're running, it's important to make sure to have that in your back pocket unless you really want to equip a fusion rifle to your loadout. The rest of them, you want to at least be above a T3. Recovery I have at a 5 simply because we are going to be grabbing the attention of a lot of enemies, so it's important to be able to regenerate health as fast as possible. And then, of course, your intellect, somewhere between a T4 and like a T6 is probably ideal. Heck, if you can get up to a T7, more power to you. But it really isn't necessary, and especially if you do go with the roaming super as opposed to Thunder Crash, you're going to be able to get your super back even faster simply because it's a roaming super. So you really are not going to be hurting. It's not like you would use Thunder Crash on a group of ads anyways, even if you got it every 30 seconds. I don't know, maybe you would. I wouldn't though, because that's not really what it's for. It's for boss damage, it's for champ damage, it's for, big, name brand enemies coming at you damage. For weapons, first and foremost, we got the Barrow-Dyad. Now, a quick thing that I forgot to touch on my last video, once you get the Panic Response 5, you can go under here to the trait and you can select the trait that you want when you go to the Enclave on Mars and shape it. My preference is to put on Taken Ambition. Blight generated increases the longer this weapon remains on target. Blighted Seekers burrow into targets and explode. I prefer this one to the other one, and I also recommend fitting this up with the Hatchling refit. And once we go over the artifact, that'll be even more apparent. But remember, you can discharge your bolt charge with virtually anything out there. That includes, yes, threadlings. And you might be thinking, well, how does Barrow-Dyad mix in with the Arc subclass? Because you're constantly getting bolt charge from your barricade. You're going to be hunkered down behind there anyways. And even when you're not, you're still using a strand weapon on top of stronghold to generate additional tick damage and take the heat off your enemies. Remember, you're more of a support role, but as you saw in the gameplay intro, it doesn't really mean you have to not do that much DPS when your number is called. Again, timing is everything with this style of play, and honestly, it doesn't take that long to get used to, as long as you run through some basic stuff first, and then go into your harder content. For the energy weapon, I recommend Indebted Kindness. Loose Change and Volshot is decent. There's a lot of different options you can pick. The reason I recommend Indebted Kindness, it's a special ammo sidearm, so you can pierce barrier champs, which we don't have a way to do that technically, intrinsically. Although I guess if you can make sure to pick up an Orb of Power before the barrier pops, you can theoretically pop the barrier with your Barrow-Dyad as long as you have Unraveling rounds granted through the artifact. But in the event that you don't, or maybe you're solo and you just don't have a way to because there's not that many ads around, I'm thinking like a Master or Expert Lost Sector, have a sidearm on and just make sure that you're modded for any champs that you can possibly come across. If you don't have Indebted Kindness, of course you can equip the Division. Division sidearm. I never really used it simply because I like Indebted Kindness better. But, for the amount of, rounds per minute that you can get from this, it's a heavy burst. So you're thinking like, kind of like a, like an arc version of like Bold Endings, if you will, kind of, something like that. It does have pretty decent stability, so you're not going to be hurting for that. It just doesn't put out the firepower that, say, Indebted Kindness does. But these would be your two barrier options. If you really want an intrinsic build, way to stun unstoppables, you can of course put Iterative Loop on. Iterative Loop from oh my goodness, Neptune. Sorry, I just had a brain fart right there. One of my favorite weapons from back in the day, still a staple in my builds. I know you see 474 enemies killed. Most of those enemies are majors, or like actual champs. With the only exception being the Colossus that spawn on planets and Ruin Nightmares, since I ran that so much back in the day. Other than that, this thing has literally just been used for champs. You don't use it for backup DPS unless you really need to, and you really don't need it for DPS at all in this build. But Iterative Loop, relatively easy to get a hold of. Go see Nimbus, go do some activities, rank up that vendor, and get yourself an Iterative Loop. If you want to be able to stun Overload champions, it is 100% not going to be necessary to equip a weapon specific to that, because I'll get through that when we go over the sword. But you can roll with Cycle Pomp, put on Power of Ambition. It will load a Taken round, which will be able to stun Overload champions. Now, it's not quite as smooth as a weapon that intrinsically stuns Overloads, such as like the Ranios or any number of trace rifles out there, but it is a way to use a more fun weapon, in my opinion, and still be able to stun the Overload champs without really affecting your gameplay too much. But I think the play here is definitely going to be just running Indebted Kindness. If you don't have Indebted Kindness, you got some work to do, go farm for it. I don't think that's going to be in rotation for a while, Warlord Ruin, but once it does, that's the time to do it. Go farm that first encounter, since it's really easy to get to, and try to get yourself a semi-decent role you can build into. Okay, here we go. Abyssal Edge. So we made a couple of changes to Abyssal Edge. Well, first off, I enhanced both of these since the last time that we talked. And the second thing is I put on Power of Ambition. I took off the backup mag and I put on Power of Ambition, which, if you didn't know, the weapon itself grants blight rounds, dealing damage over time to targets hit by this weapon, strong against Overload champions. Now, there's going to be a certain way to proc this, since we're using this in a guarding style fashion. Essentially, what you want to do is when you come across an Overload champion, let's just say you're one-on-one, right? You versus the Overload. It's not like the Overload's going to be mincing on health. So you're going to wait to use your flash counter to, and I mean briefly stun this Overload champ. Once your tick counter is high up, because he's going to be firing at you and attacking you constantly, you unleash a heavy attack, and that heavy attack is going to stun the Overload champ. And then, you can whip out your Barrow-Dyad, you can, cast class ability and stand behind and just let the lightning strikes do it for you. However you want to do it, that's the play if you're just one-on-one with the Overload champ and you don't know how to handle him with this perk, whether it's on this weapon or any other weapon, but specifically for Abyssal Edge, this sword. So this is how we're handling Overload champs. It just so happens that, you intrinsically, with the flash encounter, it disorients targets, but overloads very easily shake that off, which is why I opted to put the Power of Ambition weapon mod on. Of course, it's going away at the end of the season. Sad tear. But either way, for right now, this is the play of the game. Who knows what we'll get next season or, in the future, but Abyssal Edge still a force to be reckoned with. You see I've got 1,000 kills with this. It doesn't even begin to start the amount of heat I've taken off of allies, especially randoms when I'm running, just Nightfalls and things like that. They really, really appreciate that Stronghold Titan in their fire team. Of course, you want to go with Balanced Guard and Hungry Edge if you can help it. And just as a bonus, Willing Vessel, dealing damage or defeating targets with the weapon gradually increases stability, handling, reload speed, and charge rate. This effect gradually decreases over time, but it's gained more quickly while near allies. Surrounded, though, is the other, I think it's one of the better options here. This weapon gains improved bonus damage when 3 or more targets are in close proximity. So some of those Court of Blades encounters where it's just like absolute mayhem, you go sit in front of the boss with your rally barricade and your surrounded perk activated and flash counter with Abyssal Edge just chilling behind your barricade. The amount of bonus damage you do to that boss just by doing nothing is absolutely ridiculous. And of course, I know you saw the DPS numbers in the opening little minute there with the highlight video. Most of that was guarding. Okay, I know I use my ammo. It's not like I just guard the entire time and guard my way to the finish line and do nothing else. But most of that was guarding, just chilling, taking the heat from my allies off, and the boss was just always focusing on me, or whatever boss it was. And when those other enemies came around, oh yeah, that was when you really just... there was threadlings, bolt charges going off, ridiculous ability regen, you're super because you're just sitting there dealing damage, reflecting damage. And then of course, I whip out my Barrow-Dyad and, put a few more rounds in the enemy and, pretty fun. For the helmet, it is kind of up to you how you want to mod this. I do recommend putting on a harmonic siphon and a strand siphon though. Strand siphon would take the cake if you have to make a sacrifice here because you have a 4 energy spot mod here in your general mod. So put your strand siphon on first, and if you have room to put the arc or the harmonic siphon on to get orbs of power with your arc weapon, if you have one, go ahead and throw that on. Otherwise, these are your main 3 right here. Your heavy ammo, your strand siphon, and of course your general armor mod. Alrighty, Stronghold Gauntlets. Maximize guard stats on equipped swords. You take reduced damage while blocking with the sword. Rapidly damaging targets after blocking shots with the sword. Grants restoration for a duration determined by the number of shots blocked. So you'll see a counter, a little crash course real quick. You'll see a counter going up on the left-hand side of your screen when you are guarding. As that counter rises, you'll get more and more bonus damage to the targets that you use the sword against after guarding. Once you use that attack, you will also get a boost of restoration. Because remember, once you're done guarding, you're going to be vulnerable. So if you have a bunch of enemies surrounding you, restoration cannot be affected by enemy damage. So it makes sense to guard, use your heavy attack, then get back into the guard from time to time, and let restoration heal you and keep you going when you are not guarding yourself against the enemies. For the general mods, just whatever you feel you need. I recommend trying to skeet by just putting on a minor mod here in the first column. Of course, I always recommend maximizing your ability to get some mods, so make sure you get the Artifice mod unlocked if you haven't yet. I recommend 1 heavy-handed and 1 firepower, and simply because we are going to be relying on Barrow-Dyad, put on a strand loader so you can get in and out of reload sequence faster. Even if you are already amplified, it stacks on top of that. For the chest armor, whatever general mod that you need, put on 2 damage resistance mods, whichever one you think is best, and then put on a strand reserves mod so that you can maximize the amount of ammo you can carry for your Abyssal Edge. For the leg armor, 1000% put on recuperation. I also recommend innervation simply because we are going to be relying on our grenade to do some extra champ damage for us. And absolution, of course, a staple in almost every one of my builds, actually probably all my builds, quite honestly. Go ahead and put that on and just enjoy quicker ability regen with it. Put on whatever general mod that you need. It's not going to matter because, as you can see, I still have 2 slots available and I'm not really hurting for anything. This is a pretty complete setup for leg armor. For the class item, whatever general mod that you need. If you are lucky enough to have Artifice armor, go ahead and put on whatever you need for that. I fully recommend putting on Outreach, Reaper, and Font of Restoration. The reason that Font of Restoration is important here is not the same reason it is important for, say, a Warlock. A Warlock, of course, when your recovery is high, you get your class ability back faster. With a Titan, while you are guarding, you can theoretically recover your health because you are not technically taking damage. I mean, you are, but you really aren't. So having Font of Restoration, while you're picking up those orbs of power, you can see a couple of orbs, and I'm going to be at a, T9, T10. Just by walking around guarding, it's worth it. If you didn't want to put Font of Restoration on, your other option would probably be Powerful Attraction, which is collecting all the orbs of power surrounding you when you activate your barricade. So probably those 2 options would be best. But I probably won't ever come down off the mountain that Font of Restoration is not worth it, even on a Titan. Okay, let's go through the Tablet of Ruin. We've got 5 new perks here down at the bottom. Of course, if you saw my latest video, I went through them all, so I'm not going to bore you with all the details. We're just going to go through what I have that works very well for this setup. Of course, you want to have piercing sidearms. I also forgot you could also put on sniper rifle in your energy slot if you really want to do that, but man, that is tough. It's easier just to use Indebted Kindness. You could also put on Unstoppable Fusion if you are running with the iterative loop. Whatever works best for you. In the second column, we're going to go with Vile Weave. Targets hit by your tangles are severed. Period, point blank. Reduce tangle cooldown by picking 1 up. So even though we're not playing with a strand subclass, we're still going to be producing tangles because we occasionally are going to have threadlings and things like that spawning. And of course, once you have unraveling orbs, picking up an orb of power or a tangle grants strand weapons unraveling rounds, and strand weapons deal increased damage to strand debuff targets. So these 2 are going to feed into each other. If that's not enough, we're also going to have 2 shreds pulled up along with Horde Shuttle. Damaging unraveled targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a threadling. Boosting threadlings sever targets that they damage. And to shreds, dealing sustained damage to severed targets unravels them. Defeating a severed target creates a hotspot of strand energy, granting Woven Mail to nearby allies for a short duration boost. Unraveling projectiles deal increased damage. These deal further increased damage to severed targets. So I'm not exactly going to go through the circular logic of all 4 of these perks, but just trust me when I say all of these perks feed into each other in one way or another. So make sure you're picking up your orbs of power. Make sure you're cycling through your Barrow-Dyad so that you can get the benefits of all of those things, as well as additional tick damage. And oh, by the way, in case you forgot, your sword is strand. So add that into the mix of all things you can do with strand weapons in general, and then, top it off with the fact that the Barrow-Dyad is just a fantastic weapon to have behind your barricade because of the Blight Seekers and the ability to discharge Bolt Charge. You got yourself a ridiculously powerful class. All right, to round them off, Dielectric, defeating arc debuff targets grants Bolt Charge. This includes Volshot, which Indebted Kindness has, and then Rapid Final Blows with Kinetic Weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super creates an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. So with an arc weapon on our arc class, we're going to, of course, generate Ionic Traces. Ionic Traces, for those that need a refresh, but I'm just obviously kidding right now, Ionic Traces grant you ability energies. So if you get some Rapid Final Blows with your Indebted Kindness, which, hey, that might happen. You are using an Indebted Kindness with Volshot, hopefully. You're going to get some elemental pickups coming your way as a thank you for participating. In the next column, we got flashover. When you gain maximum bolt charge, you also become amplified. Lightning bolts deal more damage. That's important, especially when using your sword and or Barrow-Dyad. Picking up special ammo has the chance to grant heavy ammo. This is indicative of you needing to make sure that you are cycling through your weapons at least a little bit so that you can get yourself lower on ammo, so you have the chance to get some special ammo bricks to get yourself additional heavy ammo. So I'm not saying you gotta go crazy with each weapon, but at least use each weapon throughout whatever you're working on so you can get yourself additional ammo on top of it. And then last but not least, Defibrillating Blast. Stunning a champion grants maximum stacks of bolt charge. It triggers an arc bolt that heals you and jolts combatants that it damages. Pretty self-explanatory, but it is a staple in just about every arc build, I would imagine. And of course, no one is going to cry about the free jolt as well. So that is the build. Stronghold Titan on the arc subclass arguably got even stronger than the last time that we addressed this simply because of Barrow-Dyad. You add to that the enhanced version of the perks that I've selected, as well as hopefully by now you guys have been rolling your armor a little bit to try to up your discipline and melee regen as well as your resilience, and you got yourself a ridiculously strong, pretty much immovable Titan that not only takes the heat off of your allies, it deals ridiculous damage, which again, I'm going to go back when we do the build video here. I'm just going to go back and show you a couple more highlights, just showcasing how insane this thing is in Court of Blades. And then on top of that, you've got your barricade protecting you. You've got the ability to stun 2 different styles of champs, possibly 3 if you remember to hold on to your grenade, which I don't because I don't know. I just can't help but throwing it as much as I do. And then, oh, by the way, if that wasn't enough, while you're guarding, you can also revive your allies. So yeah, I mean, your team, any team that you're on is automatically going to be stronger than if there was another version of a character that was on it that wasn't a Stronghold Titan. Stronghold Titan, again, I know that I spent a good amount of time trying to convince you guys in the last few videos that it was time for you guys to make a Stronghold Titan. Those savvy vets that are already used to Stronghold Titan, they're going to tell you the same thing I'm telling you. It's worth the effort to grind. It's worth the effort to farm the armor. It's worth the effort to go for the rolls that you need to get the stats where you want. And it's worth it to farm for a good abyssal edge or just a sword in general that you really like. But as you can see, I didn't give you a substitute for the sword. Flash counter is that good. So yes, there are other swords that have flash counter on them. However, they are not wave frame swords. So the abyssal edge, with it being a wave frame, oh, and they're not strand. So that's kind of a big deal too with this artifact that we got. Now, next season, who knows what's going to happen. But for this season specifically, Abyssal Edge, Barrow-Dyad are ridiculous. I'm not sure if there's any better 2 weapons that you compare with a build such as like a Stronghold build in this, for instance. It's just that good. You can't, having one without the other almost feels like you're playing with one arm tied behind your back. With everything tied in, of course, it kind of seems like I'm embellishing a little bit. I'm telling you, when I saw the DPS numbers, and again, it's not like I was running around the battlefield, you know, stealing kills from my allies. I didn't have the most amount of kills, which is generally what most people want. They want to have the most amount of kills, most orbs generated, et cetera, et cetera. I was taking the heat off them, and I still had almost as many kills as my one of my allies. I was in the middle, but that DPS that I was able to generate, that surprised me. After a few more practice runs, it was like, man, either I wasn't playing it right the last time that I bragged about this build, or Barrow-Dyad is just adding the beef to the hot dog, so to speak. I mean, Barrow-Dyad, I shelved this weapon for so long thinking it wasn't going to, you know, pair that well. Now with the ambition, now with more strand aspect or more strand perks on the artifact, you'd be absolutely crazy not to at least just grind it out and get it to where, hey, maybe you aren't in love with it, but let's say that there's a point in time where, you know, submachine guns can stun a champion. This is one of those that's going to be near or at the top on just about everyone's list. So anyways, if you guys did find anything helpful with this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian out there who could benefit from this hybrid Barrow-Dyad, Stronghold, Arc Titan, Strand build into build, feel free to share this video with them or send them my way. My goal, of course, is to help as many people as possible. And this one is fun, guys. If you haven't made this build yet, if you haven't even tried the Stronghold Titan yet this season, don't wait. I'm telling you. Yes, I know you don't get to be as aggressive and as crazy on the battlefield as some of those hunters and some of those, ultra aggressive warlocks. And of course, some ultra aggressive titans. But I'm telling you, you're going to be welcome at any fire team, any endgame activity, any activity. How many times have you been on a fire team with randoms where it's like, man, I'm like the only one that's even trying here. This is that titan that's going to carry you, to the end and basically whatever activity that you're going to be doing. So, all right, I'm going to switch over to a few more things. I just wanted to showcase a couple of different ways I was using this in the Court of Blades, and then I'm going to get out of your guys' hair. So thanks, guys, as always. I'm going to switch it over right now. Okay, so here we go. First and foremost, just the sheer amount of damage you can put out with Barrow-Dyad sitting behind your barricade. No secret to some, I'm sure, but for those of you who've never paired this together, I mean, just the numbers on the screen speak for themselves. There really is no comparison. And here we go. We've got a subjugator in front of us, and you can see I'm just reflecting damage, and here we go. This guy's getting into it, but guess what? So am I. And literally just guarding is protecting me from all these random things that are coming at me from the different dread enemies. And of course, with this big guy right here we go. Just the numbers are going to speak for themselves. Guard, guard, guard. Doesn't matter what's around you. You're reflecting the damage. You know that my teammates are putting in work as well. It's not like they're being slouches. But here we go. I'm just discharging my bolt charge and using Barrow-Dyad to my advantage. And here we go. Here's a little bit more chaos. Again, my teammates were doing their part, no doubt, but these guys are all focused on me. Look at all of the Strand buddies that I've got chilling around, and this is an Arc class. I'm the only one that's using Arc right now. Specifically, there's a guy using Solar, and I forget what the other guy was using. Oh, Void, of course. And it doesn't matter. It's holding its own, guys. So, all right, guys, I will catch you next time. Take care.